If you're not staying front and center in front of your people, they see that as like you disappear when times get tough. So I recommend reaching out to them if you can. That's my invitation to the syndicator. If you may be really good at syndicating, but if you've disappeared during these times, maybe get back in front of your investors.
Welcome. You're listening to the Apartment Investing Show. This is where you'll learn how to start or scale your apartment investing career. Your host, Adam Adams, has educated thousands of investors on the topics he shares on this show. Adam and his guests will show you how to create residual income by investing in apartment communities. Now, here's your host, Adam AAA Adams.
I am stoked about this episode because we're going to be talking about today is how to raise capital for apartment syndications, or any type of commercial real estate that you're doing. These 4 steps that Ruben Greth is going to go over today, these 4 steps are going to be crucial and very helpful for you to be able to attract more capital. Now, just to give you just a bit of background on Ruben, is way back in the crash, he raised quite a bit of money. I mean, back then, I remember thinking that if I could raise $30,000, I was crushing it. And what's kind of cool is he was raising capital back then because he had a platform. It was really easy for him to raise capital. So they were able to achieve, I think it was $650,000 that they raised back during the crash or around the crash, but mostly for smaller deals. And today we're going to be talking about larger deals. So there's a few things that you're going to need to do to be able to close on larger deals. And those 4 things that we're discussing are going to help you. So let me just turn it over to Ruben. Ruben, give us just a bit about your background. It doesn't have to be long. And then what we'll do is we'll dive into these 4 major points on how people can attract the most amount of capital for their syndications.
Very cool, man. Yeah, Adam, thank you for having me on the show, number one. But let's correct a couple of things. It wasn't easy to raise capital back then. It was simple. So basically, I had a meetup. I met some dude that had a bankruptcy and was buying fourplexes. And coming from the financing world, I didn't understand how that was possible, right? Because lending doesn't take place if you have a recent bankruptcy. But this dude came to town and started buying fourplexes, raising capital for them. And I'm like, can you explain to me what you're doing? I went and followed him at some different, projects that he was doing. And we would basically film him. And I would post it on YouTube. He would explain how he found it, how he raised the capital, what he was going to do to tenant occupy, how he's going to reposition it, how he's going to get back on the market in a very fast, aggressive time scale. Like we're talking about 15 days. So just by sharing this and never asking anybody for capital, we were sharing our business model and people reached out to us. They started flying into town. And what was nice about it was people could physically touch the asset, right? They could actually see it. They could see our track record. They could look at our numbers and actually see the people moving in and out or what the condition of the property was and how we were fixing them very quickly. And we would document that stuff on YouTube. And through that process, over a period of about 9 months to 16 months, something like that, people started investing their capital with us. So we raised a total of around $600,000, right around there in that range. And then I had raised another $50,000 for some single family that's a little separate from my relationship with him. But yeah, man, that's how the whole thing started. It was back during the crash. We were buying units super cheap. We could cherry pick them right off the MLS and nothing too crazy. We would just try and find things that weren't distressed, that didn't have wires missing or missing AC units or that needed a new roof. Just basically go in C-class apartments, fix them up real fast, put in some countertops, maybe some paint, fix the shrubbery and the landscaping, and then get it tenant occupied, and boom. We had almost automatically an astronomical cash flow position and a very good equity position. Like we would get the properties reappraised after they were tenant occupied at probably, we were sitting at like 40% LTV almost immediately.
That's great. And $600,000+ is no chump change. Right now these days, we can raise a couple of million on one webinar, right? So we'll be able to do millions by doing something real quick. That's because we've kind of started a platform. We started a strategy. We've been doing it for a little while. And I think it's interesting that right there after just 9 months, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take apart a few people that are listening. And so it might hurt your heart, because I am going to talk about you. I'm going to talk about you. You're listening, and it might not be everybody's situation, but I think it's highly probable that you're listening or you're watching on the Facebook Live, and you've been in real estate, or you've been saying you're in real estate for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. You may have been going to different apartment investing groups or different meetup groups, or you might have been going to conferences. You might have been studying. You might have even paid $40,000 or $150,000 for your mentor, but you haven't done a deal yet. You haven't done a deal, and you've never raised $600,000, but you've been doing it for 12 months or 14 months or even 2 or 3 years, right? That happens a lot. I know that happens a lot because I go to a lot of events. I remember going to an event in Boston. It's an annual event. It's always held in Boston, and I remember there was 1,200 people there, and I remember hearing that whoever the mentor was said that they had 300,000 students worldwide or nationwide. I don't remember if they said worldwide or nationwide, but they said they had over 300,000 students. And then I go and look at everybody that's there, and it felt like only 6 people had ever done a deal. And so I know this happens. I know that people have been involved for 9 months or 12 or 24 or 36 months, and they say they're apartment investing, but they haven't yet like raised the money. They haven't closed that deal. And that happens a lot. But with you, Ruben, something different happened. And so you said, I got to correct you. You go, Adam, I got to correct you. It wasn't easy. It was simple, but it was not easy. Well, now we look at the standard where, out of 1,200 people at the event, a half of 1% of them had done anything, right? Now we look at that standard where there's a lot of people that really want to do it. They know that they want to, but they're afraid to just break out and do the thing. So we're going to talk about the 4 things with you today that really helps to actually raise capital. But this is important to share. Back then, even in the crash, it wasn't easy, but it was certainly easier than some people are making it, because a lot of times I see people that are trying to make that happen, but it feels like a challenge, or they're afraid. They're scared to maybe put themselves out there. And it was not difficult for you. In my opinion, it might have been not easy, but I don't think it was difficult for you to record something and get somebody to say, this is how I raise capital. This is how I'm doing it. This is, you know what I mean? It was not difficult. And because of that, you weren't trying to chase people down. You weren't like calling up people and being, please invest in this deal. And people think that they have to be salespeople. People think that they have to be, that they have to do all of this extra work, but it turns the tables when you have some type of thought leadership platform. That's all I want to share. 9 months, Ruben, you were able to raise $600,000 even in the crash. And not everybody can say that. And I want people to be able to say that. And that's why, even though I may have hurt your feelings if you're listening, it's not because I'm mad at you. It's not because I'm cursing at you. I want you to look at this and say, look, if Ruben could do it, I could certainly do it. I could find a way to do this. I could start a podcast. I could start recording things. I could start, even if I'm not the one running the show, I could go and record other people running the show. And that's something that I've learned from you, Ruben. That's something I've learned from you, because you're with Bakerson Capital, or Bakerson, and you were able to join them, and you said to yourself, my main role, Ruben says, the main role that I want to be able to raise the capital. I want to be able to market for them, help them get in front of more people. And so what did you do? You started a podcast. And here's a trick that not everybody understands. When you start a podcast, you get the ability to ask anybody any questions. So let's talk about this. You've decided to ask people certain questions about how to attract the most amount of capital, and you've come up with these 4 steps. I want to give it to you, and just give us the 4 steps in order and how we can attract the most amount of capital as we use them.
Yeah. So number 1, I'm still learning this. I don't want to be the teacher. I just want to share what I've learned from other syndicators, right? So number 1, before those 4 steps, I had a paradigm shift when I had Todd Dexheimer on my show, and I asked him, I'm like, how do you raise capital? And he said, well, that's the wrong focus, dude. Like, you should be providing an opportunity, not selling, right? So that was the first part that really kind of shook me. up and changed the way that I focus on things. And then another individual, Jason Russo, came on and shared these 4 steps that I'm about to share with you. And it really made sense. And for whatever reason, the way he shared it with me, it drove it into, because I think I had heard these steps before, but when he told me from a place of, hey, do this, man, or else you're not going to raise it. There's people that struggle that are approaching me 2 weeks before the deadline to raise this capital, and they're in a situation where they need $2 million, and that's a frustrating place to be. So these 4 steps prevent that from happening to you, according to him, okay? So the first step would be to get people to know, like, and trust you. And this entails, having a lot of conversations, getting them, doing an educational platform, whether it's a podcast medium or speaking or blog post or whatever method you use, get people to know, like, and trust you. And part of that entails asking questions. What is it that they need? How can you solve their problems? What are their pain points? And looking at it from an emotional standpoint, not necessarily a like, hey, let me show you why multifamily is sexy in terms of numbers, because people don't want the numbers. They want the financial freedom. They want the emotional thing. So connect with them there. And the second step would be to explain why you like multifamily, because you may have an amazing investment in cows, like Hunter Thompson talks about, that doesn't resonate with people. But so if you can explain why you like multifamily and get in alignment with people that also see it as a vehicle for generational wealth, for cash flow, for tax benefits and whatnot, and explain to them your position in it and why your track record, et cetera, explain why multifamily is the right vehicle for you and your company, and get people to align with you. And then do step number 3, which is to explain what it looks like to work with you. So when are you going to get your cash back? When are you going to get a distribution? What is communication going to look like? So those are the first 3 steps. And the 4th step that you have to go through, the first 3 before you present, is basically the deal itself. You present the deal, that's step number 4. And one of the missteps when I joined Bakerson that we had was, because we had raised a lot of money from friends and family and run out, was we thought that if we could find the deal and it made sense financially, that we could raise the capital afterwards. And what I've learned from the show is that you go through these first 3 steps and then you present the deal in the world of syndication. You can actually go out and raise $100,000 for a small multifamily or a single family, probably not too problematically, without going through those steps. But once you move into the world of syndication, now you have to create that educational platform, get people to know, like, and trust you, get them to understand your track record, why you like multifamily, what the return structure looks like. And then you have all of that money deployed, and those conversations already have taken place before you present the deal, or else it's going to be an uphill battle. And that's probably why a lot of syndicators have a lot of challenges towards the time that it comes to raise the capital, because they haven't gone through those steps. And I can only speak from my experience of seeing other people and, from Bakerson's perspective, how we were doing it wrong and what we're doing to create this new database platform and in communication infrastructure to resolve all of the things so that we don't have to raise capital after we find the deal. Because we're good at sourcing deals, but we're learning and evolving in the capital raising space.
This is fantastic, and I've got some takeaways that you shared with us for sure. The first and major takeaway is something that I share with my coaching clients for raising money. I call it the apple tree. And I say, eventually you're going to want to eat fruit. You're going to want to eat apples. You definitely want to, right? And so what some people say, and I hear this all the time, and you said it yourself, that people say if you find the right deal, the money automatically follows. And I think that could be true. Just like you said, if it's only like $100,000, maybe for your apartment, for your, like a small apartment or mostly single family, right? If it's just a small thing, if you find a deal, sure, you could probably find the money. But I think of it like an apple tree. You could, if you want to eat the fruit of the apple, the best time to plant that tree is 30 years ago. The second best time is right effing now. Right this second is when you need to literally plant the apple seed tree. And then you need to water it and nurture it and grow it over time. And you need to stay in contact with it. And you need to make sure to prune it, right? Because one day in the future, anytime you want an apple, you've got more than enough. You've got so many apples that they're falling off. So you mentioned something, and here's the direct quote. A lot of syndicators have a lot of challenges because they haven't gone through those steps. And I agree. You said that you have a lot of syndicators coming to you or other people that you know that say specifically, hey, we're 2 weeks from closing. We have X amount of millions that we still haven't raised. And I get that too. And you were talking about how some people feel like they're kind of running out of capital. They even have a long track record. And like you were saying in your company, Bakerson, you were saying like, you guys are really good at sourcing deals. It's easy for you to source deals, but there's still a challenge for people who haven't done the right process. Yeah. And all of a sudden they have a deal and they can't close. So that was a huge takeaway for me on how you shared that. I love that. Let me just recap the 4 things. It's you got to know, like, and trust them. Then you got to share the track record and the why. And I'm going to touch on that in a sec. Then you got to say what it's like to even work with you. Let your passive investors know what it feels like to be a passive investor in your deal. And I think that's bigger than people probably make it out to be, because if somebody doesn't understand what it would be like to work with you, they will never work with you. They have to be able to taste it, feel it, smell it, experience it in their mind, or else it will never actually happen. So if they can't see it, they won't do it. And then the 4th one you said is to present the deal. And so some of the takeaways that I had is when you talked about the know, like, trust, it's part of something that I work with in our mastermind group. Is if you want people to know you, like you, and trust you, you have to do exactly what Ruben shared while he was teaching this. He said that you basically have to know who you're talking to. To me, I call that an avatar. I always call it an avatar. An avatar is not a blue guy or not like a little emoji that kind of looks like you. Your avatar is your perfect passive investor that might end up investing in your deal. So you mentioned that you have to understand them. And once you understand them, you mentioned that you have to have a platform. Nobody's going to know you if you don't have a platform. If all you got is your friends and family today, if only 10 people know you, the most ever could go into your deal is 10. So you got to find a way to get the most amount of people to know you, like you, trust you. So you mentioned your platform. And then the last thing that I loved the most is on your platform, you mentioned you have to understand who they are and understand their pain points. Because there's passive investors, that's your avatar. You got to be able to, on your platform, explain the pain points to them so that they are able to say, yeah, that's right, I need to be a part of this. And once you do that, step 1, know, like, and trust, you share your track record. And one of my favorite things that you mentioned was that you got to share the why. And I think of it, I was reading this book. I'm trying to remember who wrote it, but it was called The Story Brand. It was called The Story Brand. And it talks about how you can attract the most amount of clients. Now, in Passive Investor, we're attracting passive investors as our clients. And so we create a story brand, which is the why. It's the why behind why you do this stuff. Why did you select multifamily? Why did you select this area? What are we getting out of this? What are the other things like? And how many different things did you look at in order to pick this one? So I love that you share that why, because I think people miss it. And if you want to learn more about that, go to the Story Brand, look for it. What it's like to work with you, again, brilliant. If nobody knows what it's like to work with you, they will not invest. And the 4th one that you said, Ruben, was then you present the deal. And this is an aha moment for the listener. Because again, it comes back to the first thing I need is a deal. How could I raise money without a deal? And Ruben's saying, start raising money. Get out there, have your avatar, have your platform, know their pain points, give them the story, tell them why you're doing this, tell them what it's like to work with you, have the money ready to go, then you present the deal. I think that's amazing. So how do you present the deal? What would be the main things that you've learned on your show, interviewing other giants in this industry, to be able to be the best presenters for a deal?
Man, so like I think about your actual webinar and Neil Bawa's webinar and a few other people's webinars, they have all of the database and all of those steps, those step 1, 2, and 3 before they ever do that webinar, right? So a lot of people, I think, I mean, even for Bakerson, like we thought, okay, so we'll just go from Reg D 506B to Reg D 506C and we can advertise. That's how we'll get people, right? And that didn't work, you know? So the idea here, the main thing that I really want to drive through is if you're looking for limited partner capital for multifamily syndications, you have to raise that money yesterday before you do that webinar. Because if you're trying to do it today, that's going to be a super uphill battle.
Best time to plant the apple tree is a long, long time ago. The second best time is right away. Okay, so tell us this, Ruben. I love these takeaways, and we've got a couple of extra minutes before we even jump into the final 5. So what I want you to do is, you've had your podcast for 6 months?
9 months,
10 months,
somewhere around there.
Okay, 9 months from the time we're recording. You've had it for 9 months, and by the way, I saw how many reviews you've had. That's amazing. I'm impressed. 220 already as we're recording. So 9 months ago, you got your podcast started, and you've learned a ton. And one of the things that you learned was from Todd Dexheimer, good friend of mine, and another one is from Jason Yarusi, another good friend of mine. Love that you've had an opportunity to learn from both of them on your podcast. But besides these 4 takeaways, I know you've learned a ton more over the 9 months. So I just want you to kind of shoot from the hip and let the listener know a few other things that have been very helpful for you, aha moments that you've learned while hosting that podcast.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the big part for me would be like learning what family offices are, what institutional capital or private equity is, how broker dealers work. And most recently, what I've been really studying, and I can't wait, I'm going to have Kim Lisa Taylor come on the show and talk about different fund structures. She's a syndication attorney. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to funds, they start talking about blind pool funds, and like people don't know what deal they're going to get into and why would that be attractive in certain situations and why it would not. I think the biggest objection would be is like, I have no idea what the operator is going to invest in. I kind of sketched out about that. And what I've been learning about is this thing called the deal by deal segregated fund, which is not a blind pool fund, but a fund that people can actually choose which deals to go into and yet still be in a fund. So that's kind of fascinating to me. The other thing that I'm really inspired by is these other people that are known as capital raisers that become these private equity, almost like institutions or firms or companies per se, where they raise capital for other people. So like, I'm trying to raise capital for people here in Arizona, but a lot of the people that I have on my show, they live all across the country. They invest in the Southeast and places where I'm not at. And if I can create a specific purpose vehicle or a fund or something that allows me to put a deal sourcer and a capital raiser together and then make the returns more interesting than if they came in as a $50,000 LP. You know, if I brought in $5 million, we could probably negotiate some better terms. That's something of major interest to me. So all of these, you know, first of it was like the mindset shift from small family and multifamily and having the deal first to, hey, how do you raise for limited partner by creating a communication structure and a limited, or I should say a platform, an educational platform. And then now it's starting to get sophisticated where like, what are the benefits by investing with a family office and what are the problems with that? You know, if somebody's got a single check that they can write you to do unlimited deals, they can also, because they're probably more sophisticated than you, walk away and leave you hanging at the closing table and leave you in a really precarious situation. So these are the types of things that are very fascinating for me. I'm really looking at, you know, creation of funds. Those are the types of things that very much interest me. And I know you said that you were a little nervous about talking about co-syndication, but that's one of the avenues also to raise capital is to partner with people, and you can do that on a separate place or whatnot. But that's one of the things that will help you solve your immediate capital needs. If you are in a situation like Bakerson where we haven't built the database over the last 5 years, but how can we fund deals today? And one of the easiest avenues, or one of the most, probably the most available avenues, would be to partner with somebody else that also has a track record that you can partner with. I mean, that's one thing that I'm looking at.
Awesome. All right, Ruben, I am excited to get into the final five. I've got 5 questions that I'm going to ask you, and I'm excited to see how that goes and what your answers are and how that's going to help the listener. But we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
This episode was made possible by Adam's Inner Circle program. This exclusive group is a collection of industry leaders, influencers, passive investors, and strong operators. This is the type of community you want to join, where we come together multiple times each month, virtually and in person. We support each other, invest with each other, and even interview each other on our podcasts, and invite each other to speak at our live events. If you're ready to take your real estate investing to the next level, this is the group for you. Fill out an application today by following the link in the show notes.
What is a book you recommend?
Time is Contention by Wayne Dyer. It's a spiritual book, talks about manifesting, things of that nature. I really love that book.
Best book was Wayne Dyer's Manifesting for Intention?
No, it's called The Power of Intention.
Power of Intention. Got it. The second question is, what is your biggest win? It doesn't have to be multifamily for this question. What's the biggest win of the week?
I mean, I would say over this month, the practice, because I love meditation, and people talk about, hey, you should meditate. And some people buy into that and some people don't. It's a hard practice from people that I talk to. Hey, can you meditate? No, I can't, dude. I can't quiet my mind. So I've been working on that and really focusing from some studies that I've done of Dr. Joe Dispenza on how to quiet the mind, how to bless the spiritual centers within your body, and how to start picturing and visualizing and observing the reality that you want to create. And some people are into that, some people are not. But that's a big win for me because that's hard to quiet your mind and get in the habit to do that.
What's a challenge you recently overcame in your multifamily business?
Probably the biggest one is that we were able to close a 90-unit property, and I'll speak on behalf of Bakerson, without actually raising capital for it through, sheer determination. And now we're looking to backfill it. But man, that was challenging to get that across the finish line without, letting our, earnest money or our deposit, go to waste. But that was a big win for us.
Good. The last 2 questions are pretty much the same. So I'm just going to say, what's one thing that you would give to a brand new listener to help them get into multifamily? And what's one thing that you might share with an experienced investor that they might be missing that could help them get to the next level?
Okay. So for a new investor, if the question is, what would I recommend to you? I would say focus, really don't if you have a squirrel brain or shiny object syndrome, don't let some other opportunity distract you from the thing that you really want to create. And if that is generational wealth through multifamily investing, pick a specific niche and master it. If that's capital raising, don't focus on underwriting and learning every aspect of the business, property management, integration, and everything else. Pick one thing. It might be social media for you. It might be talking to people. Or, if you're an introverted person or a person that doesn't like to talk to people, focus really hardcore on underwriting and finding and deal sourcing and getting connected that way. So that would be to the beginner advice. And for the person that wants to scale, depending on where they're at, I would recommend, bringing in and creating some systems, whether it's communication infrastructure or some kind of a CRM campaign where you're putting in the constant effort to stay front of center by actually communicating with them, particularly in times that are challenging like COVID and with this economic calamities and pandemic. If you're not staying front and center in front of your people, they see that as you disappear when times get tough. So I recommend reaching out to them if you can. That's my invitation to the syndicator. If you may be really good at syndicating, but if you've disappeared during these times, maybe get back in front of your investors.
Love it. Good stuff. Ruben, you do have the Capital Raiser show. What is the best way for the listener to find you or get a hold of you?
Yeah, I kind of like LinkedIn. So if you go to capitalraisershow.com, you can sign up for emails and get, updates on the show and when things come out, things of that nature. And you can also find me on Instagram. My handle is @CapitalRaiser, and find me on most of the social media platforms. Or check us out. Check this out. Go to bakerson.com to see our specific offerings and our track record and find out more about our business.
Awesome. Okay, so the Capital Raiser Show, and it's capitalraisershow.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to put your LinkedIn profile down, since that's one of the best places for you to reach out to people, and we're going to put capitalraisershow.com in there as well. Ruben, thank you so much for coming on the show, for teaching us what you've learned as you've had that Capital Raiser Show in your experience, the pros, the cons, the challenges, the ups, the downs. I really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, man, I love it. Thank you for having me on the show, and can't wait to have you on mine, dude.
I'm looking forward to it. Until next time, my friend, think outside the box. As a reminder, any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are for accredited investors only. And if you're interested in working with me and my team, then go to realbluespruce.com and click Get on the List. It's that simple. Just click Get on the List to start passively investing. This has been an episode of the Apartment Investing Show with me, Adam Adams. All rights are reserved, and if you haven't done so already, then make sure that you absolutely smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next episode.